Welcome to video number 6 of KDOT's training course on the corridor point naming convention, where we'll be looking at examples of how the naming convention is applied. So let's start with a two-faced barrier component. You can see here that we isolated 6 points within this component that we'd like to take a look at the naming convention for. The other 3 that are remaining there, they're just kind of replication and pretty obvious as to what they should be. So point number 1, which is on the top of the barrier there, it's a two-sided barrier, so we want to indicate a left or right. That's part of our minor geometry feature. It's also on top, so it's TOPLT is the minor geometry feature identifier for that point. The major geometry feature identifier is BAR for barrier. Now the way KDOT defines their surface models, the finished ground surface model does not follow the barrier shape. It follows the finished pavement grades from one side of the barrier to the other. So a no surface identifier for the surface identifier value is appropriate. We can see points 2 and 3 are similarly named, but the difference being the minor geometry feature identifier being center for point number 2 and right for point number 3. Point number 4 is at a midpoint in the barrier. If there were several midpoints, they might be named identically unless there was a specific reason that we were aware of that they needed to be isolated with unique names. The 5th point is a hinge point. That's a term that we're including in the additional identifier field. So there is no standard there, but it's a term that we've seen before representing that point on barrier shapes as well. And it's a consistent point above the finished pavement grade as well. Point number 6, which is on the next page, that one is a finished grade point, so it has a FG instead of a NS in the surface identifier, but then it's barrier bottom right. You can see here that as a component, some of these other values are not filled in, except for hinge with the additional. So as a component, there is no offset identifier, right? Because there is no PGL because we're not in a template yet. But if we were to add this barrier to a template, we might include an offset value, left or right, depending on the situation. With example number 2, we're going to look at a divided highway template rather than an individual component. And in this case, we're looking at a 4-lane divided highway example where the profile grade line, or the PGL, is on the inside edge of pavement. So inside meeting median, of course. And for this example, we chose to isolate and discuss the 4 points that you see indicated here on the graphic. The first point is the PGL, so that green line indication is, meaning there's no constraints, but that one is the PGL point that's anchored to the profile grade line for this northbound roadway. It's also a finished grade, right? It's a finished grade surface model point. So we start with FG, and then the major geometry feature identifier is PGL. We did not include a minor geometry feature identifier for this point. So there is no colon and no value there, and that is okay. That is an optional field. And we do not include the colon and underscore when we don't have a minor. The next value, HMA, that's the material identifier. It stands for hot mix asphalt. And the 4th field indicates that it's on the northbound roadway of this divided roadway. We did not add anything for the additional, and we do not have anything for an offset identifier. Point number 2 is also a finished grade point. This one's on the center line of the northbound roadway, so we can see that in the major feature identifier and the traveled way direction identifier. So it's northbound and center line. Point number 2 is on the surface course of the pavement, so that one also has a HMA code for material. Point number 3, finished grade. This one's on the edge of pavement on the outside. note that we could have called point number 1 edge of pavement as well for a major feature identifier. I mean, that's actually would be correct, but the PGL designation would be a more important designation. It's going to take a higher priority over edge of pavement, and so that's why we chose PGL over EOP for point number 1. Point number 3 is also on that surface course, so that one is a HMA material identifier, and here we had an opportunity to use the offset identifier, the 6th field in the naming convention, and it's an outside edge of pavement point in relation to the northbound roadway centerline. Point number 4 is on the roadway centerline, but this one is on a binder layer of the asphaltic pavement. So in this case, it's on a no surface identifier because we do not have a surface model designator for these points that are inside the pavement structure. We only have the finished earthwork surface type, and then we have the finished ground or finished grade surface type, which is top. It's a centerline point for the major feature. HMA2 indicates that it is 2 courses down from the finished course, right? So there's the finished course, then there's a intermediate course, and then there's a 3rd course that's the binder, and it's on that 3rd course. 3rd layer down in hot mix asphalt pavement structure, so it has a HMA2. So if the point between those top ones would be a HMA1. That concludes video number 6. Please continue with us on video number 7 on KDOT's corridor point naming convention.